Now you see, during cheese production, we are going to convert milk, which is liquid, into cheese. So milk is the raw material from which cheese is made, and it is by the action of an enzyme and bacteria or certain fungi which are used here. Milk contains lactose plus proteins, a considerable amount of lipids, and a lot of calcium. You see, in the olden days when I'm talking of the days when refrigerators were not easily available, okay, or they didn't even exist, one of the ways that people had of storing the energy in milk, the nutrients in milk, was to convert that into cheese so it could be stored for long periods of time. Otherwise the milk would go rotten, it would decay. If you get the wrong type of bacteria into milk, it will spoil. Can you understand this? So in a very controlled manner, the milk is converted into cheese, and that helps, or used to help, in storage. Nowadays we don't have that problem. We can store milk for long periods of time in cold storages. No, it's not reverse. The first thing we do is we take the milk and we have to sterilize it. So the first step in the production of cheese is sterilization of the milk to kill the harmful bacteria, the bacteria that cause decomposition, or any bacteria that might cause diseases if you consume them. So we sterilize it. And the way by which we sterilize it is called pasteurization, where you heat the milk and then you cool it down. Now heating will kill the bacteria. So you can heat this to 50 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. Now remember, when you're sterilizing the milk, if you're increasing the temperature, say you're heating at 70 or 80 or 90 degrees Celsius, then it should be heated for a shorter duration, 2 or 3 minutes. That's called ultra heat treat, at very high temperatures for a very short duration. But in this case, we are heating it at a low temperature to prevent denaturation of the proteins, clear? And thereby we are heating it for a longer period of time, enough to kill the bacteria, the harmful bacteria in the milk that might be present. Okay, so this is the first step. The second, now when we do this, the bacteria will be killed, and we will now have to add an enzyme. I'll tell you about that enzyme next. Okay, now after heating this milk to sterilize it, now we will cool this to 35 degrees Celsius and add rennet, that is an enzyme called chymosin, and a bacteria called lactobacillus. So we are putting a desirable bacteria in here, only one type of bacteria. Now you know this rennet comes from the stomach of cows, especially young cows. You know, when the cow is born, it's going to consume milk alone, and the calf will not produce a pepsin in the stomach, but it will produce renin, which is a special enzyme that curdles the milk. It curdles the milk proteins and makes it solid. So you see, sometimes when babies bring out the milk, it's in the solid form, it's curdled. It's because they have an enzyme in their stomach called renin. Is that clear? Now, this is why some people don't like to consume cheese, especially the vegetarians. They don't like to consume cheese because it involves renin, which is obtained from the stomach of young cows. They actually have to kill the cows, slice the stomach, and extract the enzyme from there by dipping these stomach walls into brine, into a salt solution, and they extract the enzyme. So many people, they don't like the idea that it's come from a non-vegetarian source, and that's why nowadays what people do is they make vegetarian cheese. And you see, vegetarian cheese, so usually I told you renin used to come from the stomach of calves, isn't it? But because of the objection that some people had, now they are making renin from fungi. So they're using fungal renin, and they call it vegetarian cheese. Can you understand this? So they have a larger market base. People won't have any objection. Is this clear? Then, so now what does the renin do? I told you the renin will coagulate the milk. It will solidify the milk proteins. Is it clear? And the lactobacillus will convert the lactose in milk into lactic acid, which will actually activate the conversion of the enzyme, the conversion of the protein into solid curd. Is it clear? Now, so what does lactobacillus do? Like I told you, now the lactobacillus will convert the lactose in the milk into lactic acid by the action of lactobacillus. So is a bacteria being used in the production of cheese? Yes, and that bacterium is lactobacillus. Is it clear? Now, the lactic acid has a low pH, and this low pH will now activate the enzyme chymosin, because you know the environment in the stomach is acidic, right? It has a low pH. So the enzyme has an optimum pH of about 2 or 3 or slightly acidic. So now what will happen? This low pH will activate chymosin enzyme, and the chymosin casein enzyme will solidify the milk protein casein, CASEIN, into curd, and there will be a liquid whey which will form. So if this is the container with the curd, with the milk, clear? Now you will have a white curd forming on the top because a lot of fat globules and other things which will float. You'll have a white layer on top and a slightly creamish yellow liquid at the bottom. Now this is called the curd and this is the whey, the liquid. And now this curd is now taken and it's treated with salt. The next step is salting. Now salting, actually, if you go into the history of cheese, where there is salt, bacteria won't grow. So the salt is actually a way of preserving this nutrient source, and it gives a flavor, a specific taste to the cheese. So now you have the salting and curing of the cheese with the help of different types of microorganisms. Some type of bacteria or some type of fungus will be used, and then you will get mature cheese of different flavors depending on how this is cured, how it's treated after the salting. And cheese can be kept for a long period of time. If you keep out the fungal spores from it, it can actually be kept for long periods. Is this clear now? So can you see the biology involved in the production of cheese? How the lactobacillus converts the lactose into lactic acid, how the enzyme chymosin solidifies the milk protein, clear? And that makes it into cheese. And then the salting further helps in preserving the cheese and keeping it for a longer duration. Is that clear? And these microorganisms give a flavor to the cheese because they convert it into different compounds, and each of the cheese will have a characteristic flavor, each type of cheese. You get lots of cheese, hundreds of different types of, depending on how it's cured, what type of microorganisms and what conditions it's kept in during the curing process. Is this clear now?